Welcome to Health Tech Heroes, where we talk to innovators who are rewriting the DNA of healthcare. Today, we are joined by Dr. Myriam Cherif, a trailblazer in medical affairs, oncology, and AI-driven healthcare transformation. The remarkable journey spans key leadership roles at GSK, Takeda, Novartis, and the NHS, as well as founding Kalyx Medical, where she now empowers professionals in medical affairs to lead with vision in a rapidly evolving industry. With more than 14 years of global experience, numerous publications, and a passion for integrating AI into practical, real-world solutions, Myriam is redefining what it means to innovate in pharma and beyond. We are excited to hear her story, insight into medical affairs and technology, and her advice for the next generation of health tech leaders. Welcome to Health Tech Heroes, Myriam.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure for me to be here.
And it's a great privilege to have you here, Myriam. Your journey in science and medicine has seen you move from research labs through academia and into leading roles across world's top pharmaceutical companies. Looking back, what was the emotional or personal turning point that drove you into medical affairs and ultimately founding Kalyx Medical?
So that's a bit of a personal story. I was doing my PhD, so I'm a scientist by background. I was doing my PhD in cardiovascular biology, and I was working on cardiac surgery, doing lab research on rats and mice. And at the end of the PhD, there was this moment where I thought, yes, I'm trying to improve the life of patients, but I'm still working on rats. And yes, I know ultimately in the long run, that's good. Like we have to start with preclinical research and then move to clinical research. But I still wasn't feeling empowered enough and feeling like I was making a big impact in the lives of patients. So what happened is a friend of a friend was an MSL. And she mentioned that she was doing the MSL role. And I was like, what is this? Are you promoting a drug or something? And she said, no. I have a PhD and I'm talking about the drug, about the clinical trials, giving medical information to doctors to help them make an informed decision when they use the drug for patients. And something clicked. And I thought, that's it. I want to do that. So it was not easy to break into pharma. So I had to do a postdoc first. But that time, I chose to do the postdoc in something clinical. So I was working in clinical research, still at the NHS, in a clinical trial. So the impact on patient was closer. And then that experience helped me get the MSL role. And that's how I moved to Novartis in the UK.
That's a great story. And essentially, you wanted to be closer to the patients and have a direct impact on the patients themselves. And what a great start at Novartis. It's a great company to work for, I believe. And how did you come about? And I think you did join GSK at later point and Takeda. How did you come about starting Kalyx Medical?
So I started Kalyx Medical because I identified a gap. There are a lot of people that want to move with medical affairs, because if you have followed medical affairs, you would have noticed that over the past 15 years, we moved from being a support function to being a strategic partner and being a co-pilot, right? So medical affairs is being advertised a lot everywhere. And there are a lot of people who want to move to medical affairs, or they think they want to move to medical affairs. They don't know how to do it. So there's an increased demand in medical affairs on one hand, and there's also an increased demand of moving to pharma. But at the same time, people say they want to move to medical affairs, but maybe medical affairs is not the best fit for them. Maybe it's not MSL that is the best fit and it's real world evidence. Or maybe that's market access because they have experience with payers. So in my consulting, I help a lot of clients identify where they need to go, not only in medical affairs, but also in other functions where they may be better suited. And then once you're in, it's easier to move from function to function. But when you are breaking in, you have to be smart in where you break in, as opposed to applying everywhere blindly.
That's a really, really good insight. And you started Kalyx essentially to help people out and keeping with the theme. So let me step back a little in the timeline. We are talking about a very young Miriam who's perhaps still in middle school or high school or even elementary school. So why life sciences? There are like so many other million other professions, right? Why life sciences? What made you actually think about PhD and become a researcher? It's hard work. Like, why did you get into life sciences?
I didn't want to do it. Life brought me there. So actually, it's a funny story because when I was in high school, I wanted to start working as soon as possible. I even didn't want to go to college, and my parents pushed me to go to college. And then I did a bachelor's degree, and then I was looking for a job, and I was like, that doesn't look appealing. So let me go to master's degree. And then same, it didn't look appealing. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do a PhD. But it was not like a little girl's dream. And this is really funny how what you think you want and what you end up doing sometimes is completely different.
Wow. And you went with the flow. And my story is actually quite similar too. It was, I went with the flow, and I had some people in my life who had a huge influence, a very positive influence. And that changed my course too. And you make it sound simple, like, oh, let me do PhD just like that. If you're not cut for it, it's probably not very easy.
Yeah, I've done research before. Like for my master's degree, I went to the US and I went to the National Institutes of Health and I did my master's degree internship there for 1 year. So I had an appetite for research. With a master's degree, you cannot evolve as much as with a PhD. And this is what troubled me because I thought, I want to progress. I want to do big things. Like even if I don't have a fancy degree. But unfortunately, in France, it was not possible to do big things if you don't have a PhD. And that's why I decided to do a PhD. But funny, I didn't do it in France. I did it in the UK.
I realized I was like okay, you're in France or you're in UK, but a lot of your story happens in France or UK or Dubai too. Okay.
Yeah, I lived in Dubai. Yeah, I just relocated a few months back from Dubai.
Awesome. Okay. You're everywhere. That's awesome. Were there moments in your career, perhaps during your global moves or leadership transitions, where you had to question your path and take a leap of faith? And can you share a story that stands out for you emotionally? Because I'm asking this because there's a lot of uncertainty during this time. And how did you handle that?
So there was many times where, I was uncertain of the decisions I've made many times in my life. One of them is when I moved to Dubai. So I moved to Dubai. I had the same job title, but I was with a different company. And I moved, so you can imagine, picture this, I'm working in UK, one of the top countries to work in a pharma. And I moved to Dubai, which is a small cluster of countries. And we were 200 in the medical affairs department, clinical operations, medical information, and medical affairs. We were all under the same umbrella of medical affairs, the medical department. So 200 to 5 people.
Man, and so, covering the region probably, not just...
And covering multiple countries, covering multiple therapy areas. So in general, like in UK, if you are covering oncology, you will have one person for lung cancer, one person for prostate cancer, one person for colon cancer. In Dubai, you have one person for everything. So you need to be an expert in lung cancer, you need to be an expert in colon cancer, and so on. So for the first 6 months, honestly, I questioned really hard my life choices. I was like, why did I do this to myself? This is a complete crazy move. And I was so panicked at the beginning. I've not shared this with anyone, but I applied for jobs back in UK while I was like the first 6 months in Dubai. And then after the panic and the dust settled a little bit, I thought, okay, I'm going to give myself 1 year. And then if I don't like it, that's it. I'm going to pack my bags because it was very different. Like moving to Dubai was one of the really, like the discrepancy between my expectations and the reality was really, really huge because I've been there on holiday so many times. I cannot even count the number of times when I've been on holiday. So I thought I knew everything. But when you arrive and you work there, it's completely different, completely different. The health system is different. different. The pharma landscape is different. The culture is different. Professionally is different. Everything is different, because I used to think you work with pharma, you work with Novartis UK, Novartis UAE is going to be different, or Takeda UK, Takeda, but actually the country shapes the culture as well. So it was very different. And as a person who's born and raised in Europe, it was very, very challenging for me. I found it very difficult. And Dubai is very westernized, like it's not conservative, it's not too conservative or anything. If you've been to Dubai, you know that. And it was very difficult, very, very difficult. So I thought, give it 1 year and see if you don't like it, you pack your bags and you go back. And after 6 months, I found my adjustment and, I found my balance, and then I loved it. But initially, I hated it.
Can you double click on that balance? What did you find?
I stopped actually comparing. In UK, I was doing this, and here I have to do it like this and whatever. Instead of looking it like I'm doing this, or I have to do it like this and I miss the UK way or the European way or whatever, I started looking at it with a different angle and saying, this is a challenge, let me embrace the challenge. And that shift, that mindset shift, helped me actually accept the challenge and thrive. And then once you thrive, then of course you're going to like it.
That's such a big life lesson, right? For a lot of things. It applies for a lot of things. And we will come into future and changing and everything later on, but I want to pin that. Accept it. And that's the key for thriving. I think is going to be a key thread here. So thank you for bringing that.
A quote that I really, really like and I try to live by is accept what you cannot change and change what you cannot accept. So it's one of the two. So if you don't like something and you can change it, go ahead and change it. If you don't like something and you cannot change it, then you have to cope with it and find a way to accept it.
Absolutely. In many situations, action is not going to be productive. You have to take that next step, take that action. And I think in
Absolutely.
business and as entrepreneur, learning that pretty fast, that, hey, action is super key. The next question looks a little bit straightforward, but I'll give you a flavor why it is not that straightforward. You have coached and inspired countless professionals to break into or advance in medical affairs. What early challenges shaped your empathy for others seeking to forge a similar path? Basically, my question is, why do you do it?
Because my journey was not straightforward. My journey in medical affairs, in pharma, it was far from straightforward. And actually, my first year as an MSL was really tough. Coming from academia, and I think this is true for anything, when you step into a new industry or a new function or something new, you have a lot of self-doubt. Hello, imposter syndrome. And it's not easy to navigate all that. So because it was hard for me to navigate all of that, I want to empower people to not make the same mistakes that I made and to accelerate their career. Like, don't make the same mistake as I did and stay 5 years as an MSL if you want to move to a medical advisor. It took me 5 years because I was considered as the expert and people kept me as the expert. Oh, but you're such an expert. Why don't you keep doing the MSL role? But I want to progress. Yeah, but you're not strategic yet. So then I started stretching myself and become more strategic. And that's what I teach and how I mentor like my clients into like empowering them to better position themselves, to ask better questions, to stretch themselves so that they can accelerate their career.
Great advice. And effectively, you're speaking from your lived experience. And I think that will have impact on people who are listening to you because it is having impact on me right now, right?
Sure.
We will focus on Kalyx Medical a little bit more here. Could you introduce Kalyx Medical to listeners and share its core mission within medical affairs landscape? Also, kind of highlight something that you do uniquely that no other consultant does. What is that unique thing about you that you do for your clients? What you do at core and the unique thing that you do.
Yeah. So what I do at core, as I said, is like empower medical affairs professionals or aspiring medical affairs professionals, because there are people working in academia who want to break into pharma, for example, to accelerate their career in medical affairs. And also I have a strong interest in artificial intelligence and everyone is talking about artificial intelligence, but this is linked also to empowering medical affairs. No one knows really how to use AI for medical affairs. There's no clarity about use cases, about workflows, about AI agents for medical affairs and so on. So I do a lot of education around that. And what is unique about me and my company is really the fact that if you take most other consultancies, who will have people who have worked in medical affairs, but most of the time, not as much as me, like 15 years of medical affairs. That's number one. And also across different regions. I actually worked in UK, lived in UK, worked with a European team, worked with a global team, worked in Dubai, covered Latin America from Dubai, covered Asia and from Dubai, Middle East and Africa as well. So this is like what is unique. I've covered emerging markets. I know very well global, even though I have not worked at a global level, but I know global because I've sat with global to devise the medical strategy and things like that. So what is unique about me is I have this developed country training, but also I have a mindset and I know the challenges of people who are in emerging markets. Because you see, in pharma, the strategy comes from global, but global based its strategy, 80% of it on what? US and Europe.
Yeah.
And out of US and Europe is like 70% US and 30% Europe, correct? But having this emerging market view, I know what their challenges are and I know what limiting resource is, resource constraints, because I was part of it. I was part of the shock that I had back when I moved from UK to Dubai. My budget was like 10% of what we had in the UK. For
And you have
for
like
cluster, exactly.
For a cluster of countries, you have 10% of what you had for one
Yes,
country.
what I had for one country, exactly. So this is, and of course, this is linked to the revenue that a country brings, because what UK brings, because at the end of the day, this is a for-profit company, right? This is not a charity. So what UK brings is not going to be the same as what Gulf countries bring. But just to give you an idea, so I think this is the unique when you talk with people either they're based in the Middle East, but they don't have this other aspect, or they're based in the US, in UK, and they empower a medical affairs professional, but they don't have the dual view. And this makes me, I think, more empathic and more flexible and adaptable, because I can adapt my strategy of mentoring for someone who is with resource constraints or for someone who has resources.
And those are very two different strategies, how we approach
Completely
the issue.
different, yeah.
Absolutely. And I had never thought from that perspective of a resource constraint versus not. And that'll be interesting to dig deeper into that maybe later. But we will go on to the next question I had was, you did mention AI a few times, and we are also health tech heroes. So I would like to touch upon that as well. How does your approach to AI training and career support for medical affairs professionals differ from traditional consulting models or online training platforms?
So are we talking specifically about AI or about
It's specifically
everything?
about AI, right? Because there is so
okay.
much noise about AI, right? I cannot look anywhere without seeing an AI training program. But why should I come to Myriam, right? I know why I should come to Myriam, but I would love to hear from you as well.
Yes, you're right. There is a lot of training for AI, but what I find missing is the AI training is very technical. Learn coding, learn Python, AI for healthcare, AI for electronic health records, AI for clinicians, AI to read X-rays, AI to read MRI scans, and so on and so forth. But us in medical affairs, we don't do any of that. Do I read an MRI scan? No, that's not my job. I'm not a radiologist, right? So what I found missing is the AI literacy for non-technical people. So in medical affairs, we are technical, but in medical affairs, we're not technical in IT. So my trainings are more about explaining how to use and maximize tools or AI tools to help with medical affairs. So there's a lot of education around prompt engineering for medical affairs, because people, they use, and I was one of them, they use ChatGPT and they give a poor prompt. They get a poor output and they say, what is this hype about AI? AI sucks. This is a lot of feedback that I hear. But actually, it's because their prompt is not structured. That's one problem. The other problem is that they don't know what they can do. Yeah, I use AI to draft my email. It's like using a computer as a calculator. AI can do much more than that. It can help you with your KOL interactions. It can help you brainstorm for educational content. It can help you design patient materials. I mean, there are like so many things that you can do with AI that people are not necessarily aware of. So this is a second issue. And then the third issue about AI, about the gap, is how do I integrate it into my workflow? Because I already have tools that I use with my company. So I need to know what tool I can, and then there's like all the compliance and ethics aspects of that. But that's a completely different topic. But the main issues that I see with AI in medical affairs is really people are not literate again enough with they don't know how to use it, they don't use it much, or they misuse it, and then they're not satisfied with the output, and then there's a lack of awareness on the use cases.
I think the first 2 points that are very important, that you want to prompt engineer and you want to learn about tools and what they can do and all the power. I think a lot of people end up learning about prompt engineering and tools and still say, now what? Okay, I know this, but how do I put it to work for me? I think that's where you also come in. So you're not leaving them with prompt engineering, you're not leaving them with tool awareness, but you're also letting them know that, hey,
how this fits.
is how you can fits in your workflow. And
Exactly.
you're going into the fourth part as well. Now you're talking about advancing from there, right? So I think what you're doing is pretty phenomenal. It's a little different, and this is very specific to medical affairs too. I don't think there are too many people there who are doing for medical affairs at a internally, yes, but externally for people who want to learn and be experts, they're not doing it. And small companies too, I think, simply cannot afford to have a whole IT team training them.
And you have to bear in mind that pharma in general is a slow adopter of tools. And this is not because they don't want to, it's because that there's so much confidential data that there's a lot of diligence, compliance, ethics to consider, that it takes time, especially in big pharma. And there was a report from MIT recently over the summer where they showed that actually 95% of companies across all industries, not only pharma, have failed to adopt generative AI applications. And the bigger the company, especially in pharma, the harder it is, because there are a lot of more steps. And they were saying in the report that it was actually small companies in general that were outsmarting bigger companies, because small companies, they don't have that many steps and that many layers of approval. And this is what small companies stand out in the AI adoption.
Amazing. And I agree to the idea that it's not. So I was at a conference last weekend on Saturday. It was a health and AI conference. One of the panel members mentioned that a company came to them and said that we have 150 workflows and none of them have any practical application yet. What should we do? The answer is, why do you have 150 workflows? Identify 3 pain points, big 3 pain points, and apply AI and focus on those instead of dividing your attention to 150. Focus those, especially start with operational ones. Focus on those, and that will give you such enormous wins that it will just make sense to do next 3.
100%. You raise a very important point, because many people are thinking, oh, there's a new feature in ChatGPT. Oh, there's a new feature in Gemini. Let me try it. But that's not how it works. You need to identify the pain point first. And then once you identify the problem, then you think, okay, is there an AI solution that can help me? So I work in oncology, for example, and there are 100 papers that are published every day. I do not have time to read 100 papers every day, but I still need to be up to date with the papers. Is there an AI tool that can help me? Yes, an AI tool can search the papers, do a summary, and send it to you by email. You can get an AI agent to do that. So that's how you work. You identify your pain point, and then you find the tool.
So every founder faces setbacks. What is one challenge you have encountered building Kalyx Medical, and how have you navigated it? I understand this is very early in your entrepreneur journey, and what do you think is what has been your biggest challenge?
That's a good question. So Kalyx Medical is 3.5 months old.
Yes, I
So
realize.
yeah, so basically one challenge that I still face is that you have to do everything when you're an entrepreneur. So you have to, because I get my clients from LinkedIn. My website is not ready yet. I'm working on it. So I get my clients from LinkedIn. So, but in order to be visible on LinkedIn, I have to write on LinkedIn. But writing on LinkedIn takes time. So I have to be on all the fronts. Like you have to do the marketing, you have to do the operations, you have to do the sales, you have to do the medical content, and you have to do the scientific content, and so on. So it's having all of these different hats of being an entrepreneur. Or solopreneur in my case, that it's I'm learning a lot, definitely, but it's also very challenging because you have to do multiple things, and it's things that you didn't learn necessarily. Like, for example, I didn't learn marketing. I never took marketing lessons. Of course, I worked with marketeers when I was in pharma, but I don't have a degree in marketing. I don't have an MBA. I don't know how to sell. Like all these things, that you need to learn when you are an entrepreneur, even though you have a scientific background. So I underestimated these things, and also the neurosciences aspect of the sale, because people buy with their emotions, and
Yes,
I didn't believe that before. You go like, no, I'm very rational. I buy with my brain, and actually, no, I realize I buy with my emotions.
absolutely.
So I would say this is the challenge. The challenge is trying to be everywhere at the same time.
That's a huge, huge challenge. And I think we have to relearn every single aspect, and
Unlearn and
every single
relearn. Yeah.
aspect becomes important. And I think being an entrepreneur changes you fundamentally too, because if you go back to anything else that you have previously done, you will probably end up doing differently just because you have gone through this process. And it's a tough
Yes,
one.
100.
Saying things are changing pretty dramatically in the industry and in the world, and you have really adapted to changes as well in your life, and like geographically, job wise, and career wise, and now even business wise. So you have seen how rapidly AI is shaping healthcare. Where do you see is the biggest opportunities and risks for medical affairs in leveraging AI in the next decade? Essentially, the question is, what should we be worried about, and what should we be excited about when it comes to the changes?
That's a very good question, and it's very complex. So I think definitely AI in medical affairs is very exciting, especially AI in healthcare in general, in pharma, in healthcare. The AI applications are really tremendous. So I've worked for several years in oncology, and something that excites me is that with AI, we're going to be able to identify the drug responders. Because, for example, there's a class of drug in oncology called immuno-oncology, PD-1 inhibitors, for example, and about 40 to 50% of patients in clinical trial respond to the drug. When they respond, it's a great response, but when they don't respond, then it's very sad because there's no other option sometimes where they can get something. So with AI, we're going to be able to say that patient is going to respond, so we're going to give them drug A, and that patient is not going to respond to drug A, but we're going to give him drug B. So this is, I think, in clinical trials, in healthcare in general, I think this is something like super, super exciting, because this is where there is a really, really high unmet need. And then in medical affairs, something to watch out is AI hallucinations. This is the time where AI is saying something in a confident way, but that's actually a wrong thing. So I have a friend of mine, she does gardening. okay? And she asked ChatGPT, it's actually very funny. She asked ChatGPT, hey, I want to book on gardening. Can you advise me? And it said, yeah, this book. And it gave a title and it gave an author. And then it said you can find it in Barnes and Nobles, for example. And she went on the website and she looked for like 15 minutes everywhere and she couldn't find it. And then she understood that actually it said a confident thing, but it was the wrong information. So I imagine, and the latest OpenAI report also says that the hallucination are due for ChatGPT, and to some extent this may be the same for other AI tools, but the hallucinations are due to the training that were provided to ChatGPT because it was rewarded if it gave an answer, as opposed to being rewarded to saying, I don't know. That's how it was trained. So that's why it understood that I need to give an answer. Doesn't matter which one. As long as I give an answer, I will get a bonus point. That's how it understood the assignment, and that's how it hallucinates. So there are two schools at the moment. There's one school that is saying if we train better AI tools, there will be less hallucinations, and therefore it will be more reliable. And this is very important for medical affairs, because in medical affairs we cannot afford giving wrong information to HCPs, to patients, because that's going to have a patient impact. That's going to be very dangerous. There's another school saying that we are living in a time where there haven't been so much AI generated text. And since AI is using all public information and training from text, the idea is that AI is using AI generating text to make AI generating text. So the risk of potential hallucination is also higher. So I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. Yes, there are going to be some factors that we can influence in terms of hallucinations, and that's going to be better for medical affairs. But also we have to be wary of how we train the AI tool, because if we give only hallucinated text, then of course the output is going to be hallucinations. So we have to be careful. But for me, AI in medical affairs and AI as a whole in health in general, we need to have a human in the loop. Yeah. I'm not comfortable at all completely outsourcing something to any AI tool. At the moment, I don't trust.
Very fair. And I think this also comes to your earlier point where you train people on AI, is that some tools are more amenable to less hallucination, because I think it needs to hallucinate to be creative. That's where the creative part comes. And that is very useful when you're creating something creative, like in other markets, but that has a negative connotation in medical affairs. So we have tools that like perplexity, where the temperature is low so that it does not hallucinate as much. So just knowing the tools to have a little bit better start at your low hallucination might actually help as well. So for aspiring entrepreneurs and future leaders in pharma and health tech, what is one lesson from your journey you wish you had known earlier?
So I think I would go back to being more aware that when you are an entrepreneur, you have to do everything yourself. And at the beginning, you're going to be spread very, very thin, and try to learn and be curious as much as you can. Like, so if you are an entrepreneur in medical affairs, don't stick to learning things about medical affairs only. Learn about personal branding, learn about selling, learn about operations, learn about marketing, learn about delegating, learn all these things that will help you with your business.
And as a final question for you, I'm being very aware of time. Before we wrap up, Myriam, you have 90 seconds to share anything that we might have missed during our questions, or reiterate anything that you deem very important. Essentially, the question is yours, the answer is yours, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. So I would say if you want to succeed in medical affairs, I would say be curious and do not underestimate the compounding effect, because we read so much, especially now in the era of social media. We read so much about things that look like overnight success, but it's not overnight success. It's the 1% effect every day that is compounding, that after 100 days, you have 100% effect. So if you just improve by 1% every day, you will be much better after 1 year. And this would be my advice to people, because this is not, the market is tough out there. I speak with a lot of clients. They're trying to break in, and like you said, there's a lot of restructure happening, a lot of changes going on in AI, in pharma, in so many things. Change has become a constant now. And so do not underestimate really the compounding effect, or the 1% benefit that will compound, and at some point it will become exponential.
Great advice, and I will take that myself personally to heart. Just improvement and keep going, and things will happen. And if you expect overnight success, then we are setting up ourselves for disappointments. So with that, thank you very much, and I really, really, really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. I really enjoyed this interview. Thank you.